Toyota Material Handling is now providing a factory rebate of up to $2,500 when you trade in a Toyota or a competitive unit. Now, through September 30th, 2024, trade in your forklift and get a new industry-leading Toyota forklift. This rebate applies to electric and internal combustion models. Unlock your upgrade today by visiting toyotaforklift.com. That's toyotaforklift.com, or click the link in the show notes. Welcome to this bonus episode of The New Warehouse. Originally broadcast live on LinkedIn, I was joined by Mary Hart, Taylor Pacifico, and April Lardy of Locus Robotics to discuss their content strategy when it comes to marketing in the warehouse industry. If you're trying to grow your content marketing strategy and gain traction on social media, then this is the podcast for you. Hear how they approach content, different social media channels, and how they keep it fun all along the way.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
All right, we are live here today with this live edition of the New Warehouse Podcast. And today we're going to be talking a little differently, not exactly about warehouse operations themselves, but we're going to talk about warehouse marketing and marketing within the warehouse space. And specifically, we're going to be talking about content, social media creation, and just having fun in general with that content. And I think that the panel that I'm going to be joined by today it certainly has a lot of fun on social media, as I see, and just in general in their marketing, and I think as a culture for their business overall. And that's going to be some of the team from Locus Robotics here joining me. So I'm going to be joined by Mary Hart, who is the Senior Content Marketing Manager, also aka the voice of Locus Robotics, as she has marked on her LinkedIn, and the host of the new Locus podcast as well. Also going to be joined by Taylor Pacifico, who is the Customer Marketing Associate over there, and April Lardy, who is the Senior Product Experience Manager. And both Taylor and April are kind of instrumental and behind the scenes on the Instagram, their social media, a lot of the Locus stuff that's going on out there. So we're going to dive into some of how they approach warehouse marketing, some of the content marketing that's out there, how they go about looking at a lot of the social content that's out there too. And we're going to dive into all that stuff and learn about kind of their processes and how Locus goes about these things and how it works for their business overall in the warehousing industry to increase awareness out there. So before we dive in, maybe we should give kind of like just a brief overview of Locus Robotics for people that are not familiar. So I'm not sure who wants to take that one. I'll leave it open here to kind of just give the overview of Locus itself. Maybe Mary, as the voice of Locus, would want to explain that one.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us, Kevin. I appreciate it. Locus Robotics is a warehouse automation solution. We have our Locus bots, Locus Origin, and Locus Vector, which help warehouses move what matters in their warehouse. That's the sum of it. It comes along with a Robots as a Service, RAAS model, where they can get the robots and then scale up or down as needed during peak seasons, and then be able to get their warehouses more efficient by the robots interacting with the humans to help them increase productivity.
All right, great. And definitely earlier pioneers, I will say, in the robotic space within warehousing, specifically around e-commerce fulfillment for sure, and kind of those piece pick robots as well that we've seen develop, and early embracers of the New Warehouse podcast, I will say. We took a visit to the old headquarters now, way back when, and got to experience that. So appreciative of Locus Robotics for all the support throughout the years. And if you haven't seen them around, then I'm not quite sure how you could miss them, honestly. That's kind of what some of the conversation we're going to have today around their content, just their overall marketing presence through the industry too. So Mary, why don't we continue with you? Why don't you kind of tell us about your role as senior content marketing manager and what that kind of means?
Absolutely. I have been here for about 3 years now. It will be 3 years as of this Friday, actually. And I write all the content for the blogs, case studies, ebooks, and create a whole bunch of memes that you'll see on my personal LinkedIn or on our Locus Instagram. I published the book Total Guide to Warehouse Automation earlier this year, and we launched that at Modex to some great success. And recently started the Warehouse Automation Matters podcast, which airs bi-weekly every other week, and will go live again tomorrow with our third episode, which actually features you, Kevin.
Ta-da! Yes, very excited for that, and I really appreciate you having me on the podcast with you and recording with you last week, Mary, and I'm happy to see that you guys have started a podcast. I think when you made the announcement, I said it was a little long overdue, I think, and it makes a lot of sense with all the partners and customers that you have access to talk to, and just the wealth of knowledge that you have within the company as well. So happy to be a part of that, and very happy to be on the podcast with you too. So thanks for that explanation of your role. And now, April, how about you? What's your role at Locus, and explain to us kind of your responsibilities there?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks for having us on, Kevin. This is awesome.
Definitely.
I am a senior product experience manager here. I've been here almost 2 years. And my role is really unique because, to sum it up, it's kind of a combination of robotic deployment, product management, and also marketing. Because on one hand, I'm working on our trade shows, private customer events, sales demos. But on the other hand, I'm doing video and photo shoots, and as you mentioned, creating social media content. This is actually my first time doing a marketing role, but it is so exciting because I get to blend all the things that I love and things that I've worked in previously.
Interesting. I'm curious about that. I mean, how has that kind of been shifting to a marketing role from whatever your previous experience was?
Yeah, so before I was a deployment project manager. So I was completely in the warehouse working with the robots all day on site for months at a time, out of the country for months at a time. But on a personal level, I've always loved videos, social media. I mean, I had a MySpace as early as I can remember. So I think it's really cool to be able to blend that in my work and also show our robots because they're fun to watch and people love seeing them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's cool. And I definitely remember the MySpace days. Would you have had a Locus bot in your top 8?
Absolutely. Yes.
All right, great. And Taylor, how about you? How about you tell us a little bit about your role at Locus?
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks for having us again, Kevin. I am a customer marketing associate at Locus. So my role falls under the marketing programs team. I work on our social media, including LinkedIn, do some email marketing, support our testimonial and case study processes, and overall just wear a lot of different hats. I've been on the team for the past 3 years, and it's been a fantastic experience, and I'm excited to be a part of such a fast-moving, innovative industry.
All right, great, and thank you for that, and thank you all three of you for joining me again today to talk about this topic. So we're going to talk about content in the warehouse marketing space, and I think the warehouse industry is kind of traditionally a little old school in a sense, we could say. Maybe I don't know if you guys agree there, but as we've seen, certainly I would say, like, in the last 5 years since I've been doing the podcast, and maybe a little later than that too, as more technology has come into play. I think it's become a more interesting space for some people and a little more attractive to outsiders, you could say. And I think a lot of the content and the marketing has changed a lot in the last kind of time period here. And I'm curious from your perspectives. I mean, why would you say within the warehousing industry now, and maybe over time too as well, why does kind of content matter? And maybe we'll start with Mary here on this one.
Sure thing. Anyone who's heard or thought about the term that robots are taking away jobs knows the importance of why education is important. And that's where content comes into play. The content is key to re-educate the marketplace, and especially warehousing associates who might fear that robots are going to come in and take their jobs. And instead, it's that the robots can come in to help them and to help them be more productive and work alongside them. And that working with robots is fun instead of being a fear. And the content matters because it provides that information to warehouse workers, managers, operators alike to educate and inform them in the manner that they prefer. Not everyone wants a research report. Not everyone wants an infographic. Not everyone wants a checklist or a blog. It's the matter that they prefer. So we try to make the education accessible to them in whatever form works for them best, and hopefully also entertain them and provide guidance from people in the industry through the form of case studies, podcasts, blogs, and more.
All right. And Taylor, you want to add to that?
Yeah, sure. I think content within the industry is definitely crucial, like Mary said, but also for a wider audience, including those who might see robots in pop culture or not at all. Ever since COVID, and even before that, with the prevalence of online orders, people have such high expectations for delivery times without even questioning how they receive their package in just a couple of days. And so, educating everyone on the power of robotics and the benefits of robotics is totally essential. Like Mary said, it's important to show how they're helping people behind the scenes and how warehouses can become such an efficient environment with robots. One of the reasons why I love my job is because the solution that we are providing is helping people. And when Locus bots are implemented, especially in a warehouse, they make the workers' lives easier and safer.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting to hear those thoughts from both of you around why the content matters, and I'm very curious actually to hear April's answer on this, coming from like a non-marketing side to now a marketing side. I'm curious, April, your thoughts on why does that content matter within the industry?
Yeah, I think before, because I was in the deployment world, I really didn't think about the marketing side of it. And now that I am, and I try to explain what I do to people who maybe don't work with robots every day, they definitely tend to think about a humanoid, or AI. And like Taylor said, they're not thinking about that behind the scenes. They don't realize how many aspects of modern life are automated. So I really love that our content can kind of explain that. Like, we're using it in a way to help people to get your order to you quicker, of course, and to make the warehouse a safer place to work. So I feel like the education of our content is really important. It brings about a lot of awareness about robotics and warehousing.
Yeah, I think those are all great points, like from all three of you, because I think the education and awareness portion is such an important thing, and I think it's such a great thing to be able to see that, and like you said, I think Mary, you said there, where making you more comfortable, like with robots coming into the space, and not necessarily thinking or trying to change that thinking a little bit around our robots going to take our jobs away and things like that, and creating the education awareness, and Locus has done a great job, I will say, from what I've seen, doing that, to kind of, I guess, change that thinking a little bit, and make people realize that maybe robots are going to help them just do their job better, in a sense, and make them more comfortable around that. So with that being said, and I think maybe you all kind of hinted at this a little bit already, but we look at the overarching goal for Locus when you look at your content perspective, and I think when we look at content, certainly there's kind of pillar types of content, and then different shorter forms of content kind of stream down from that. Like Mary, you mentioned there's a book that you guys launched at Modex, and different types of things like that. What is kind of the overarching goal for Locus when you start to look at content, and really how to drive that in the direction that you want to have certain messaging, I guess you could say? Mary, you want to take that one?
We'll be back after a quick break.
When it comes to systems, you want something that will start showing results fast. You're looking for a tool that can enable your 3PL or warehouse to get to the next level. So why wait? That's why Carton Cloud provides supported, fast onboarding that can have your WMS up and running in hours, not months. Jump into Carton Cloud's easy-to-use workflows for all of your services, including cross-docking, serialized inventory tracking, e-commerce order fulfillment, and more. This software is built by logistics people for logistics people, and those logistics people are standing by to help train you and support you so that you can be successful with your customer. With 24/7 real-time reporting and free online training, you need to check out Carton Cloud for your operation. Take the next step in your operation by heading to cartoncloud.com/free-demo or click the link in the show notes.
Absolutely. We like to say that seeing is believing, and we do that. That's one of our overarching goals for Locus, because we have real videos and case studies of real people interacting with the bots, which shows the solution itself and in a form of social proof, the power of Locus Robotics and the Locus bots in order to show again and educate them that robots aren't going to take away their jobs. They're going to make their lives easier.
April, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, aside from the education, I love using Instagram as a tool for brand awareness and also just showing how fun and vibrant our culture is. Because I mean, I love coming to the office. I don't live in Massachusetts, so when I do get to come here, I love seeing my coworkers. So that's one big point. And also just to give people an idea of what types of businesses do use our robots. Like you said, we have a lot of videos showing our customers using them in their own warehouse. And we can do retail, we can do medical, we can do industrial. So it's kind of showing how versatile they are and how many different jobs they can help you with in the warehouse.
Great. And I think that's interesting. I want to talk to you a little bit about that, you not being in the office there. But let's hear from Taylor for a second on kind of the overarching goal from a content perspective.
Yeah, just to echo what April said, we aim to spread awareness on social media with our content, and specifically on LinkedIn and Instagram. We want to build a community around our product, around the Locus bots. And we see that followers love the bots from the corporate side all the way down to the associate side. And building this community kind of helps us create a space where we can interact, where customers can interact with us. And we have an open line of communication. A lot of times customers or even warehouse associates will put a picture of a bot that has a name on it, and they're excited to be working with the bots and have it in their warehouse. And social media gives us a way to receive feedback from our customers. And then we can also give them information, like they can stay up to date on the latest innovations, find out where they can see our robots in person, like at trade shows, and many more exciting things. But I would say that's our goal with content on social media.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think that's a really interesting thing too there. She said like it's a way to, also get feedback from customers, it's because I think a lot of times maybe people take the approach or think about, trying to get like new customers, right, through their content or their marketing efforts. But I like that you pointed out there that's a way to get feedback from existing customers or let them know like what's new and what's happening with us, or where can you see us, and get the latest and get updates and things like that. So I want to come back to April for a second there, because April, you mentioned that you're not in Massachusetts, you're not at the office there. So I'm curious, like from that perspective, I mean, when you do travel to the office and when you are in the office there, because you guys do on social media, especially like Instagram, I notice, you share a lot of stuff, content that is from within the office. So like, how do you maybe take advantage of your time there to try and capture like as much content as possible?
Oh yeah. Before I come, I always have a list that I develop with Taylor. And actually Mary's been sending some really good suggestions lately as well. We create a list, we talk about who we think would be good to participate in them. Sometimes we'll let them know beforehand, like, hey, Tuesday at 12, can I borrow you for 20 minutes? So as long as we, plan ahead of time, it's pretty easy to do that. And sometimes people come to us with an idea and they say, hey, I saw this, can we do this? And so if I'm here, I'll do it. If not, Taylor may. It just depends who's in the office at that time. And when we aren't able to do those sorts of things, we will use our B-roll that we have from events like trade shows or special customer events. And those can be, to a lot of the trending audios on Instagram, we can just kind of plug those in when we aren't here in person. But of course, I love to highlight, coworkers as much as possible and the robots.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting too, like to see your mix around the content that's focused on like the product itself, right? Like the Locus bots and what you do, but then there's also content like, that's just kind of like office, I guess, content or commentary, maybe you could say, like in general.
Yeah.
Like the one I saw today was like, I don't know who it was, but it was a guy, and it was, him saying like, oh, this needs to be a desk visit versus an email, right? Or something
Yeah.
like that. And I think it's interesting to like see that mix because you get an idea for the culture that you guys have too overall, like as a business, which I think, maybe is not an immediate standout thing for a potential customer, but at the end it does like matter in that overall package of like who you're going to be working with or who you're potentially might be working with. And I think that culture, there's a lot of fun there for the Locus team. And you can see that through, what you guys share on social media and through your content and just overall like trade show presence too. I mean, you guys do the Hawaiian shirts and the different themes. So there's a lot of fun happening there. And I'm curious from that perspective, I think for a long time there's been, this narrative a little bit around business where it's professional, like, you need to keep it kind of buttoned up and, especially on LinkedIn. But I think over the last, year, 2 years, you certainly see that, the, I guess, buttoned up personas are kind of unbuttoning a little bit, I guess you could say in a sense. And,
Hmm.
you're seeing like there's more fun being integrated into that, more personal a little bit. So I'm curious, how is your approach to kind of the balance between like the fun and professional within your content that you're creating out there?
Yeah, I think every social media platform has a different voice and
Mm,
purpose, just like every professional out there probably has their professional meeting voice and their fun voice, right? So I think by leveraging our social media platforms in that way, we can reach a lot of people and we can also send the right message at the right time. So if someone is looking for a video from a customer, they might be more likely to go to our LinkedIn. But for example, if someone's looking to apply to work at Locus, I would hope that they also check out the Instagram because,
mm,
like you said, they can see what we're like. They can see how awesome our office is. They can see so much about the day-to-day life working here, whether you're remote or not. We've tried to feature everyone in our social media. So it's because in the end, we're professionals. Locus wins awards, has positive feedback from customers, but we're also people with great personalities. And I like to think that we're the group that you want to have dinner with after an event or a meeting.
that's good. That's good. Yeah, I think that's like a good approach to take to it. And it's interesting too there, like you said, if somebody applies for a job at Locus, like that you'd want them to see like what the culture is like. And I think that's great that you're demonstrating that too as well. So Taylor, do you have any thoughts there on that?
Yeah, I think having both the fun and professional content on LinkedIn and Instagram also allows us to reach a wider audience. We're not only putting content out there for business professionals looking to create a better warehouse environment, but we're also putting content out on Instagram that's fun that maybe a robotics enthusiast might see. There's definitely a balance between what we put on Instagram and what we put on LinkedIn. I know, for example, one time we posted one of our reels to our LinkedIn page, and it was actually one of our higher performing videos, which
Mm,
was funny. But if we did this all the time, our LinkedIn page would, I think, lose a little bit of credibility if all of our videos were kind of fun, more Instagram reel trends. So, like what April said, each platform definitely has certain styles of content that belongs on there. And we just kind of try to find that balance and give our followers what they want to see.
interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, do you guys make a concerted effort when you're looking at like Instagram versus LinkedIn or different channel, like, okay, like these are content ideas for Instagram and these are content ideas for LinkedIn or these are content ideas for a different platform?
I would say most definitely our Instagram reel trends are mainly for Instagram. And then if we see one performing really well on Instagram, sometimes we'll put it over on LinkedIn and see how it does. And a lot of times it'll actually do really well on LinkedIn because I think it kind of breaks up that professional content that we're typically putting out on there and brings in a fun aspect. And LinkedIn is also for recruiting. So people might see the video and say, oh, wow, this company looks really fun. And be more interested in working for us. And like April said, a lot of times people will go to an Instagram page to see kind of what the company's like and get a taste of the culture on there. So I think for LinkedIn, having that fun content definitely breaks it up a little, but for the most part, we keep our Instagram reels on Instagram and our more professional content on LinkedIn.
Interesting to hear like the approach and the thinking there. And now when we talk about fun, right, I got to come to Mary here for this because, if people don't know, Mary is also Pinky as well, which is a dinosaur that I see pops up at the Locus headquarters, the office there sometimes. And so I'm curious, Mary, like your thoughts on this, on the fun versus professional argument in, I guess, business content and business marketing.
Absolutely. I definitely have a take on that, especially with the Pinky T-Rexadero side. And yes, it's modeled after Pinky Tuscadero, to date myself from back in the day with Happy Days. I think obviously life should be fun, but you have to have a professional element as well. But showing that fun side and that human side is so important, especially in these days when AI is running rampant and there are even artificial intelligence profiles out there that are just bots rather than actual people. So showing that human element in a professional manner, Pinky aside, is so important. And it's important to be professional and consider where you're posting. Pinky came about in a lark just because due to the pandemic. And I was bored one day and bought a pink T-Rex suit and started posting videos. And the company I worked for at the time loved it and encouraged it. And it got my notice for this company. So I kept going with it. But for that balance, I create and post memes for work on my personal LinkedIn, and that we use them on Instagram and Facebook, but we wouldn't post those on the professional LinkedIn account just because of the fact that we want to have that separation of sorts where, they're funny, they get shared by personal people throughout the company or through the warehousing industry overall when they find them amusing, but it's more of the human element there rather than a corporate account.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think that's an interesting thought there too on the personal like LinkedIn page versus the corporate account. And I'm curious there. I mean, how do you view, and I mean, do you encourage like, obviously, you guys are involved in the content marketing and marketing and social media. So you're going to talk about your companies, but do you encourage other people within Locus who are maybe not on the marketing team, like to also like share about the company or share things that are happening? How do you kind of approach that to, increase or maybe amplify like the voice overall of Locus?
Absolutely. A lot of that actually happens organically with when I tell people about the latest blog or, the latest video that we have, and people just share them. And we love to see that because that shows that it wasn't just, we're not force feeding it to them and they're not feeling pressured to do so. They just are sharing about it because they want to do so. But there also is, Taylor creates posts for our trade shows, etc., to share, or about the podcast when it was launched, that are available through the LinkedIn profile, the corporate profile, for the company members to share as they want to. So there is that element to it, but mainly it's just being able to post things that people want to share rather than making them feel like they have to.
Interesting. And I'm curious from, I guess, Taylor and April, I mean, as you kind of started to make more of an effort to create like fun reels and things like that from Instagram and stuff, do you see that starts to maybe get a little like infectious from other employees too, and they start to want to share more about the company or like what they're doing at work and things like that?
We'll be back after a quick break.
I hope you're enjoying this episode. Do you want more warehouse content delivered to your inbox? Sign up for our new email series called Warehouse Wisdom Wednesday to get an educational series of emails on warehouse basics delivered directly to you every Wednesday morning. Find the sign up link in the show notes.
Yeah, I think initially some people are shy to be in a video, but as we're kind of doing it more often, I do see more people volunteering or, like I said earlier, suggesting an idea that they want to be in a video or in a LinkedIn post or an Instagram post. And also, I'm trying to include people from every department, right? So we want engineers, we want IT, we want sales, we want everyone to be involved.
Interesting. And Taylor, anything to add there?
I definitely agree with April. I think the more that we do post and create, especially on Instagram with the reels, the more likely people are to volunteer and the more volunteers we do see wanting to be in content. I know at ProMat, I believe we started making reels and we didn't make too many. And then this year at Modex, more people wanted to be in them just from our presence the previous year on social media. And now this year, I'm hoping even more people will want to be in these reels and volunteer just because they saw them from last year and are excited. And I think, like you said, Kevin, the Locus spirit is kind of infectious. And when more people are excited, it kind of brings the whole team together. And the events are great to do the content at just because that's a great time when everyone is together. I know April is remote and not all of us go into the office, but the shows are a great time when everyone is together and we can all film content and be a part of it.
Interesting. And I mean, when you look at, so you mentioned there, like you just started like kind of making the reels like last year, and then you were doing more at Modex, which I definitely noticed as well. And I think we did like one or two like collaboration posts on Instagram too. And when you look at online presence, and I think a lot of companies kind of have this question as to like where am I going to get the most engagement from like my potential audience or like the audience that I want to get engagement from. So I'm curious, where do you guys see like the most engagement coming from I guess like warehouse professionals or like your targeted customers? Like what channels really are generating like the most traction for you?
I would definitely say LinkedIn. That's where we get the most likes, comments, shares, and see the most interactions with our customers and warehouse professionals. Like, for example, when a site goes live, a lot of times management at that site will post pictures of the bots saying, oh, they're so excited. The new robots are deployed. Many other customers, they tag us, they post pictures of their bots. We get a lot of positive feedback, like I mentioned earlier. And we also see people who aren't necessarily interested in a warehouse automation solution speaking up and kind of commenting on things like our features on the robots. For example, we have the Mechanim wheels that are really cool on one of our robots on Vector that people get excited about. And certain demos we've done with partners, people also really like to see. But one of the aspects of social media that I think is so important that a lot of times companies forget is that social media is meant to be social. So you can't just have a megaphone and be giving your followers and your audience content all the time. You also have to be engaging with other content, like what your customers are posting and the feedback people are giving you, commenting on things. So just emphasizing social media is supposed to be social and it's not supposed to be your company with a megaphone just kind of spewing content.
Yeah. And I think that's a great thing to point out there too, because it is about, that engagement as well as just posting and getting stuff out there. So, I mean, when you guys look at engaging like that, like you mentioned engaging with some of your customers' posts or something like that, I mean, are you as like the Locus page, like is the Locus page going out there and liking stuff and commenting as the Locus page, or is it like you as your profile doing that, or how do you kind of strategize that, and how do you think about how you're going to engage in that way?
Yeah, so April and I are monitoring the Locus pages. April more so Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, seeing who's mentioning us, who's commenting, and commenting back from the Locus page. And if a customer tags us, a lot of time I'll comment back from the Locus page. But we have a great company and everyone is excited about the solution. So if a customer does post us, usually the Locus page is not the first to respond. It will be somebody at the company who's also excited. So we have a great team that comments without even asking just because they're also excited. So the Locus page is commenting and employees, I would say for sure.
Okay. Interesting to know. Yeah, I was curious about that. And so I would say let's put the spotlight on Mary here for a little bit as the voice of Locus Robotics. And now with the new podcast from Locus as well, I guess we could say she is truly the voice of Locus Robotics, right? So Mary, tell us a little bit about the podcast, just launched, I guess, within the last month, right? So tell us a little bit about it, how it came about, and, kind of what is the focus there.
Sure thing. The podcast Warehouse Automation Matters did indeed just launch last month. We have our third episode coming up tomorrow. And like I said at the top of the hour, it is focusing on you, Kevin. And thank you
Yeah.
for being on the podcast
Thank you.
and to talk about the future of the supply chain and your background with your 500 episodes of your podcast. It came about because first I wrote that book, The Total Guide to Warehouse Automation. I was thinking about more ways to generate content and get information out to the industry. And a podcast just seemed like a natural follow up. And especially when I realized that it could be done audio only. So, in case anyone who was on the podcast didn't want to be on video, they wouldn't have to be. They could just be on audio. And it's easily accessible through Spotify, through Apple Podcasts, through our own website. But it's twice a month and it's around 20 to 30 minutes for each episode, which isn't daunting to people. It's not, like a 2-hour podcast where you have to, have lunch, etc. And each episode dives into the real world challenges of the warehousing professionals to further provide that human element once again. And the idea was to give warehouse operators, managers, and associates alike another place to go to hear tips and advice from their peers or from people in the industry who have worked it on how they can improve their own warehouse, and also hear about trends like they will tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've listened to the first 2 episodes so far, I think, that have come out, and definitely like very interesting conversations. And I think, as I said in the kind of the beginning a little bit there, I mean, I think it's such a smart thing for Locus to do, because you do have so many partners, so many customers, so much knowledge within the company itself. Like, I feel like there's a lot to talk about there on a podcast, and to bring out of people from an educational and awareness perspective, which we talked about as kind of the overarching goal of the content in that place as well. So, I mean, I'm curious, how are you now going to be taking that podcast, right? And that's kind of a long form piece of content. And now how do you maybe take some of that, repurpose it into shorter form content? Maybe April and Taylor are doing that, or I'm not sure what the process is there, but I mean, how are you thinking about taking that content and using it for multiple different kind of pieces or ways to deliver that content?
Absolutely. What I'm doing right now is using the material for blog posts, and they're going to be for LinkedIn posts down the road that will have quotes from there and then link to it. From some of them, for ones that are from customers that don't already have a case study with us, the conversation, if it bodes to that, will become part of a case study that then they'd be able to approve and see if they want to publish it. But the thought is to take, and down the road, we're going to be taking short clips of the audio, at least that's the idea, and utilize them in Reels or in LinkedIn posts as well.
Oh, interesting. Okay. All right. I'm interested to see that and how that kind of rolls out there, and how do you guys do that? And, obviously excited for my episode to come out tomorrow too, as well.
Absolutely. It's going to be great.
So I appreciate you having me on there. And yeah, I mean, if we look at your overall presence, I mean, one of the big things I think for Locus that stands out, and you guys are known for having these giant and very impactful booths at ProMat and Modex, and I see some type of Locus presence at like almost every trade show or conference I go to in the industry. And April, I think, is kind of instrumental in some of these trade show presences, or presence would be the right word, I guess, there. So tell us a little bit about, as you think about like kind of trade show presence, how do you think about that, from a content perspective, and like how do you think about, how can we use this presence to also just generate a bunch of meaningful content that we can use not only during the trade show, but like after the trade show as well?
Yeah, trade show is one of the top times for getting content because so much is happening at once. The challenging part is capturing all of it, of course, because at any given time we could have, a really active booth. We could be, giving a presentation in our theater. There could be a speaking engagement happening across the show. So I know Taylor and I at shows are typically like, okay, you cover this event, I'm going over here,
Mm.
and we are just getting as much as we can because there's education and fun happening at the same time. Not to mention, it's the one time of the year that most employees are together, or at least employees that don't typically get to see each other are together. So we can really capture the fun, the culture side as well. So it's like, it's for me, it's the perfect storm because I am so busy setting up for the show beforehand, deploying the bots. And then the minute the show starts, it's like, okay, go time. It's marketing time. It's content time.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's such a great point too. Like there's so much happening at a trade show where there's so many opportunities to capture content and get things like that. And, it's great to hear that you're taking advantage of that and kind of like batching that together. Taylor, do you want to add anything in there from, the content sharing perspective?
I would say April and I definitely divide and conquer. Like she said, there is so much happening at once. So it's important to try to capture as much as possible in that short time frame. And even after the show, it's important that we do a lot during it because then we'll have this repository of videos and content of the robots and of our employees. And then we can use that moving forward, not just when the show is happening, but when the show is over. Repurposing that throughout the year, I think, is super important. Just like all of our content, repurposing things is a great strategy just because we don't have new content coming in every single day and new videos of the robots. So using what we have and repurposing it so it works on different platforms and in different ways, I think is super important.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And talk to us a little bit about the repurposing, right? Because I think, you create some content and I think a lot of people think like, okay, we've created this content and, we put it out there and that's kind of like the end of it. It either like hits or misses, maybe hopefully it hits, but how do you kind of repurpose some of that stuff and how do you decide what to repurpose and what makes sense to repurpose and how to maybe position it a little bit differently than you did in the past?
Definitely. So I think a lot of our video testimonials, we put a lot of resources into, and it takes a lot of effort to produce those. So when one does get put online, it goes on our website, but it also goes on social media. And then we'll use it moving forward for as long as we possibly can, just cutting it, making it shorter for a reel or using it even in the background of a reel, taking snippets of it. So then we have photos and just really repurposing that content for different platforms and then making it work for different things for different initiatives we're doing and things like that. And I know Mary covered how we're planning on using her blog, taking quotes from it and repurposing that, taking little snippets, I think is super important. And long form content, like long videos, works fantastic on YouTube and our website, but taking it and snipping it up, I think lets us repurpose that so much more and keeps the viewer's attention, especially when it's a super long video. So.
Interesting. And Mary, do you have any thoughts on that as you create a lot of the long form content and blog posts and things like that?
Absolutely. For case studies, I've gone and repurposed them and taken quotes from them and turned them into social posts that focus just on the quote. I've also done that from the book that was published and then also ebooks that I've done as well. I will take those and create short little infographics or short little checklists from them to make them, give them that little chunky content that people like to be able to look at a glance rather than having to use a full book or read a full book. It might not be as appealing to them, while reading an infographic or a checklist might give them the points that they want right in one place.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think it's very interesting to, I guess similar to April, like I don't come from a marketing background either. I'm a warehouse operator and kind of by starting this podcast, stumbled into marketing and content creation and all these things. And it's interesting to see, like, you know, that framework that I think works so well is creating some type of long form content, and then how do you kind of cut that up, chop it up, repurpose, and put things out there in different ways, because you learn that, like, your audience and the people that you're trying to, I guess, get some attention from or have them become part of your audience, like, they digest things in different ways. And you know, you need to maybe create different ways for people to digest that and consume that content. So very interesting stuff from all three of you here. I do wonder, I see Kate is on here. If she is able to come on stage, do have a question for her, actually, specifically if she can come up. I don't know if she can raise her hand or if she's in a position to chime in here at all. All right, Kate, how are you?
Good. How are you guys? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah, thanks for joining us here. So I wanted to ask you, we talk about content, right? You had a very funny picture a while back on LinkedIn where you were speaking and a squirrel came on stage. So tell us a little bit about that, and how do you kind of like maybe take, you know, moments like that are unexpected, unplanned kind of content and try and put it out there to, you know, make something interesting.
Yeah, of course. Well, thanks for calling on me. I was just listening in because, April and Mary and Taylor are all on the team and love to be a cheerleader, right? So great job, ladies. Um, but yeah, it was a funny situation. I was at Gartner and presenting, and just before I was going on to present, a squirrel came into the conference hall, not sure how, and poor little guy was so scared to death. We were trying to shepherd him out, but I think with that, it's all about having fun, right? I felt a little like, was it Mary Poppins-ish, with the squirrel coming closer and closer to me. So, it's always a fun opportunity to make a joke about things. And I think if you're having fun doing your job, and then you're more likely to take things less seriously. Kudos to Mary for the pink T-Rex, those types of things. So, yeah, it was a fun situation.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I like when I saw you post that picture, I'm like, is that photoshopped or did that really
No,
happen? Yeah.
no. And the funniest thing was I was like, oh yeah, I guess, everybody wants to learn about mezzanines, because I was talking about mezzanines and even the squirrel, and some people in the back couldn't see the squirrel because he was so little. So they thought I was like making a joke and my slides weren't moving or something. And I said, no, literally, there is a live squirrel right here. And one of the people pulled out some nuts and helped move him out of the conference hall. But yeah, we almost had a new mascot, which was pretty awesome.
Yeah. Interesting. Very funny. And I appreciate you coming on stage here to talk as well and joining the other Locus folks here. So really appreciate everybody for tuning in here. So as we close out here, I mean, why don't we kind of maybe go around here between Taylor, April, and Mary, and get your maybe top tip for sharing content. Taylor, you want to start?
Sure thing. I think my top tip for sharing content would be making sure you're catering towards your audience and giving the right audience what they want to see. Like we talked about earlier, posting Instagram reels on Instagram and more professional content on LinkedIn tends to work for us. And just having a smart content strategy, planning as much as possible is definitely the way to go. Even though not everything can be planned, it is good to have a strategy and to know what you want to come out with for that month. And finding different trends like April and Mary are so great at is for sure a good strategy.
All right, great. And April, how about your top tip?
First thing I think of is just be relatable. Think about what your audience wants to see. And like Taylor said, your audience will change depending on the platform. But if someone is applying at Locus, like for example, if I could go back in time and me applying at Locus and think about what would I want to see on the Instagram? What would I want to see on the LinkedIn? And also to keep your eyes open for unexpected content. Just like the squirrel that you mentioned, there are so many fun things that happen in the office that like, hey, wait, this could make someone laugh, and make someone see what a great time we have when we're all working together. So definitely those two.
Okay, awesome. And Mary, how about you?
Absolutely. My top tip would be to be human. And that shows your fun side, your human side, like April said, to be relatable and try something new just to see what might happen. Because when I posted my first meme that really took off was I was happening to be watching one of the Chiefs games and saw Travis Kelce yelling at a coach. And so I took that image and shared it with a meme that said, "Give us Locus bots," like he was yelling that instead. And it took off. It did really, really well with reposts, with shares, with comments. I was shocked, and impressions. So I just kept doing it. And it's interesting to see what works and what doesn't work as well. But that isn't something that I would have done even a year ago. Just wanted to try and be more social, like Taylor had said earlier, that social media is social. It's not just doing the microphone and saying here's what we're doing and not having any kind of humanity to it.
Interesting. I love that. And yeah, I mean, I think it's so important to have that human element, like you said there, Mary, and be able to do that, and also kind of, recognize who your audience is, what channel are you on, be social, be engaged, and also, take advantage of things that are happening in the moment, as April said with the squirrel situation, or Mary even as the Super Bowl situation there with Travis Kelce as well. And I really appreciate the three of you joining me here today for this live episode of The New Warehouse, and thanks to those who are tuning in. If people want to find Locus Robots on all these different channels, what's the best way to go about that?
On LinkedIn, we're Locus Robotics. Feel free to follow us, keep up to date with our content. We're on Instagram as well. That's where you'll see most of our fun content. We're also on YouTube, X, Facebook, and pretty much all social media platforms. So follow us, stay up to date, and you'll get to see what exciting things we have in store for you.
All right, great. So thank you very much again to Taylor, April, and Mary for joining me today. Enjoyed this episode? Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and for more content from the New Warehouse, find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Links to subscribe can be found in the show notes, and for everything The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com.